have a very special video for all of you today. I did an email interview with the project lead at Lordbound, which is an expansion-sized mod for the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. This mod takes place in the war-torn Druadach Valley on the edge of High Rock and Skyrim. The discussion was purely about the lore of Lordbound and setting of the game. I've listed all the relevant links in the description. Do visit them and join the Discord server of Lordbound. So I'll be speaking to Kiria, who is the project lead of Lordbound. You can read about her role in the description. Before we get started on the lore discussion, I would like to quickly go over the map of Druadach Valley, where Lordbound is set in. To the east, we have High Reach Hold, the seat of power of the local Breton lords. The capital of the hold is High Reach City, which was established sometime in the Second Era. In the past, High Reach ruled the entire valley, but they have lost territory due to political changes. To the north, we have a small orcish outpost that leads to a tunnel that connects Druadach Valley to the Reach in Skyrim. In the south, there's a connection to High Rock as well. If you look at the center of the map, we have Gardale. This is controlled by the Empire. The arrival of Imperial forces in the valley has upset the delicate balance of power. The question arises, why are the Imperials here? Are they seeking some natural resource that is found exclusively in the Druadach Valley? Do they correspond with the Empire and Cyrodiil? So there are lots of questions about the Empire's presence here. In the western part of the map, we have Garshakor, home of the Orcs. There are 5 Orc Clans and apparently the alliance between them is fragile. Then there are Reachmen Clans fighting for their land. I've also been told that the entire map will have lots of Weimar ruins, Nordic ruins, dragon cult temples and more. So there's a lot to explore and sink our teeth into. I hope this gave you an idea on what to expect, so let's get started with the lore discussion then. The Druadach Mountains are a mountain range that separates western Skyrim from eastern High Rock and Hammerfell. Now, where does Druadach Valley fit in these mountains? If one views the valley on a map, where is it located?
It's a rather isolated valley nestled within the Druadach Mountains themselves. On a map, this would more or less be located in the space you've described between High Rock and Skyrim. Because of the difficult terrain and lack of easy access, until the events of the story, the valley is operated as an independent lordship since it was cut off from High Rock in the Third Era.
Your latest video says the Druadach Valley was lost to the outside world after the War of Bundermark. Can you explain what happened during the war, and has a link to Skyrim and High Rock resumed in the Fourth Era?
So during the War of the Bundermark, the Nords marched west from Skyrim and claimed the city of Johanna and High Rock and everything along the way, including the Breton land ruled by a fellow named Lord Rolston, who surrenders to the Nords, in Druadach Valley. The Bretons eventually succeed in reclaiming Johanna, pushing the Nords back east through the valley. The Bretons then collapse the route from the valley to Johanna to keep the Nords from regrouping and re-entering Johanna. Meanwhile, in the valley, Lord Rolston rebels against the now scattered Skyrim forces. A battle that occurs near the Skyrim border eventually cuts off the route to the valley, leaving it to be completely isolated by the end of the war. In the Fourth Era, the route's only recently been reopened. With land trade to High Rock becoming a higher priority now that there's a civil war in Skyrim, the Imperial Legion has a particular interest in opening up the valley for their own use and's been excavating the old tunnels. Meanwhile, the Orcs have found their own ways into and out of the valley.
Tell us about the geographical features of Druadach Valley. What can a player see as they walk around and explore this hidden place?
Well, we tried to strike a good balance of being both fun to explore and fit in well with the location and lore. Obviously, a lot of the terrain is very mountainous, especially on the east and west edges. In the higher altitude areas, we have snowy mountains and pine forests, while the lower elevation will see fertile fields and rivers coming down from the mountains. Players will also be able to explore the craggy south-central swamp and the glacial mountains in the far south.
How do the people of Skyrim and High Rock enter and exit Druadach Valley? What are the nearest settlements in Skyrim and High Rock that trade with the people living in the valley?
Until the recent opening of the passages, the ways into and out of the valley were known only to a handful of people, primarily a group called the Wayfarers, who would smuggle goods or people into and out of the valley. The nearest major settlement on the High Rock side would be Johanna, while the nearest on the Skyrim side would either be Solitude or Morkazgur, the Orc stronghold.
So the Druadach Valley has multiple factions. You have the Breton lords who rule High Reach Hold, and then you have the Empire in the center, and the western region predominantly contains multiple Orc strongholds and clans. And then you have the Reachmen who want their land back. How are the relations between these factions?
As you might imagine, they're not great. Things between High Reach and the Orcs have been tense since the Orcs first arrived about 30 years ago. The Imperials suddenly stepping onto the scene sets off a series of events that effectively put the valley into a state of turmoil at the start of our story.
High Reach is home to the famed Lordbound. These mage knights enjoy autonomy in regards to magical training and tutoring. Do we have a school like the Mages Guild or the 4th Era College of Whispers where any citizen can join and learn magic? Also, your video talks about uncovering the truth of the greatest wizard in High Reach's history. Can you share anything about this wizard?
We don't have anything that would typically be described like a school or a guild. The Lordbound are a fair bit less formal than that. However, many mages still attempt the difficult pilgrimage to High Reach for opportunities to apprentice under the Lordbound or to work on their own skills in a place with effectively no restrictions on what kind of magic can be practiced. As for the greatest wizard in High Reach's history, I can share that he's central to the main quest, but don't want to give away too much.
When you play the Elder Scrolls V, one of the loading screens there says Orsinium was sacked by the combined forces of Hammerfell and High Rock, and many Orc refugees fled east to Skyrim. Apparently, the kingdom eventually reformed at a new location between Skyrim and High Rock. I'm assuming Garshakur is one such location. Tell us about the 5 Orc clans that have an alliance in the Druadach Valley.
So Garshakur is composed of Clan Garshak and 4 others under the rule of a single leader, Chief Gorik. The chiefs of the other clans remain in a position of influence as the chieftain's close advisors. Each of the major clans also maintains a district within or near Garshakur where they can exert their own direct control, allowing them to live within their own interpretation of Malakath's will. While each of the clans has different identities and specialties, for example, being known for their expert metalworking or masonry, they're united in their ideals of Orcish honor and worship of Malakath.
So the Imperials control the central region around Gardale. Why is the Empire here? What are their motivations?
It's more accurate to say that they control an area adjacent to Gardale. Their official mission is to reopen the valuable land trade route between High Rock and Skyrim in order to help to supply the Imperial side of the Skyrim Civil War. However, I imagine there's probably a bit more to it than that.
Unfortunately, in Elder Scrolls V, multiple Reachmen clans were consolidated into the Forsworn as a generic enemy for the player to kill. I wish the Reachmen clans were more fleshed out and we had multiple Reachmen clans of their own culture, traditions, needs and ambitions. How are the Reachmen clans portrayed in Lordbound?
I agree. One thing I was really happy we were able to do was give our Reachmen clans their own identities and unique motivations. Reachmen clans in the valley range from battlefield scavengers to guardians of nature to boogeymen alleged to kidnap children from their homes. Unfortunately, they do still largely play the role of the villain, given that the factions the player can ally with are all invaders to the valley, but there may be a way that the player can arrange for a more amicable outcome with some of the clans.
As a player, what are the joinable factions in Lordbound? And will all of them have unique quest lines?
The main factions the player can join are the Imperials, who will recognize a player from their service in Skyrim or accept them as a mercenary, the Orcs, and the Lordbound. All 3 have their own main story quest, which can also intertwine with each other's main story quests.
Thank you, Kiria and team, for taking time to discuss the lore of Lordbound with the community. We appreciate all the hard work being done and look forward to the release of Lordbound one day. If you guys have any questions or suggestions for the Lordbound team, feel free to write in the comments below. Do remember that Lordbound is scheduled to be released in March 2025. Thank you for watching, and I will return soon for more Lordbound content. May Malakath, the divines and the old gods watch over you.